Hey everyone, Tim Schofield here, and it's time to take a look at the latest flagship phones from POCO, the F6 and the F6 Pro, and there's some really interesting differences between the two devices, including price, of course. POCO's always aimed to include flagship specs at an affordable price, and they announced their early bird pricing, and it's a $110 difference, so $339 for the POCO F6, and $449 for the POCO F6 Pro. So keep that in mind as we talk about the differences between these two phones. But anyways, we are going to unbox them, take a quick look what comes inside, and then of course get some hands-on with both these phones. Let's get started. Here they are, the POCO F6 and F6 Pro. I will do a dual unboxing to help save your time. The F6 will always be on the left, F6 Pro will always be on the right. First up, in the box, I assume the same thing in each, but let's check. A SIM ejection tool plus our standard booklets, getting started guide, and a case as well. Really nice that you get an extra, especially at this price point. Nothing crazy with the case, but it is nice that they include it. Again, assuming the Pro has the exact same thing. Yes, they do, but a different style case because the phone's build is a little bit different. So there's just another look. Pretty much the same exact material in terms of the case. Next up, we have our devices. I'm gonna set these to the side for just a second. Let's continue through. Here is one of our first differences. So the Pro model comes with a 120 watt charging brick, whereas the regular comes with a 90 watt charging brick, which, you know, is a bit of a difference. Not crazy because 90 watts is still very fast. Size difference, charging via USB Type A. They each come with the exact same cable, USB Type A to USB Type C for charging. And on to what you came to see, our F6 and F6 Pro lets you know some of the specs of the device. First of all, Snapdragon 8S Gen 3 versus the 8 Gen 2, which you're probably saying, oh, wouldn't the Gen 3 be better? We'll talk about that in just a little bit, but I do want to continue through, and we are going to boot these phones up for the first time. And while they boot up, let's take a closer look at this hardware. Obviously a very different design on both of these phones. So down at the bottom, we've got a speaker, USB Type-C port, microphone, and our SIM card slot. Moving along, on the right side's where our buttons are. So we've got our power button, volume rockers. You'll notice everything's kind of lining up. That's because they have the same exact screen size. So the body, you know, is pretty much the exact same size. Now up towards the top here is where you've got another microphone and IR blaster on both. Really nice. And then just a different placement for the speaker up towards the top. And then along the left side, you've got absolutely nothing. And a close look at that back design. Really cool little reflective design on the white model of the Pro. Anyways, here is our camera system. So you'll see 50 megapixel OIS said on both of them. Side by side, obvious difference in the cameras. A double camera system versus a triple camera system. The F6 has a 50 megapixel main camera with OIS and an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle lens. And then the POCO F6 Pro adds a 2 megapixel macro camera, which I really don't need in my phone. However, I'd also like to mention the 50 megapixel lens in the F6 Pro has a better sensor than the 50 megapixel lens in the F6. So just kind of keep that in mind. Expect those main sensor pictures to be a little bit better on the Pro. So now our phones have booted up. I also want to point out there is a pre-installed screen protector on both of them. All right, I'm gonna run through the startup process, talk about anything that's noteworthy. Both phones give you the option for face unlock and have in-display fingerprint scanners. So setting them both up, you get some haptic feedback, and I'd like to point out that it feels a little bit different. I don't think the motor's any different actually. I think just because of the build materials in the phone, the vibration feels just slightly different between the two. This is a plastic build versus a more metal build on the F6 Pro, which gives it a more premium feel in hand, but this one's just a little bit lighter as well. So that's kind of another difference between the two. Now continuing through, I'm done on this side. Let's just, I'm kind of not focusing, but there we go. Done and done. You have the option between classic and app drawer, obviously going with the app drawer. All right, we are all set up and ready to go with the POCO F6 and F6 Pro, both having those 6.67-inch displays. Both of these are AMOLED displays. However, there are differences. The F6 even has something that's better than the Pro model, believe it or not. But the Pro has a higher screen resolution at 1440p versus 1220p on the F6. But at least it's nice to get higher than 1080p.
on the base model. Now, when it comes to brightness, there is a difference. The Pro gets up to 4,000 nits of peak brightness, whereas just the F6 has 2,400 nits of peak brightness, which is still not bad, but 4,000 is an obvious improvement. These are also both 120 hertz displays, which I can tell is enabled out of the box because they both look extremely smooth. But I want to talk about what the F6 has better, and that is the glass on the outside of that screen is different. The POCO F6 actually has Gorilla Glass Victus on the outside, which is a little bit better than the Gorilla Glass 5 that's on the F6 Pro. So just an interesting choice between the two. And I also want to point out the F6 has an IP64 rating, so it does have some water and dust resistance built into it, and I don't think the F6 Pro has any IP rating, which seems like a strange choice between the two, but those are a couple things that the F6 has better than the F6 Pro. Anyways, let's jump into the settings app and go into display, because I do believe you can change the resolution on this. So let's see, yeah. So display resolution on the Pro can be changed. It's 1080p out of the box. You're gonna have to change it manually to 1440p to take full advantage. Obviously there's a battery difference between the two. And then on the F6, it doesn't look like you can change the display resolution. So it's stuck at that 1220p, but default is dynamically changing between the refresh rate, whereas you've got, you can force 60 or 120 hertz. Again, an obvious battery life difference, but highly recommend using 120 hertz because it looks just so much smoother. So very quickly, let's do a quick fingerprint scanner test, setting it down at the exact same time. It seems to unlock at the exact same time. Again, both have Snapdragon processors, and there is the in-display fingerprint. I assume they're using the exact same tech in both because it is pretty much the exact same speed. So now let's jump into the camera app and just snap a couple quick pictures on both. Shutter speed seems to be very quick on both, actually just very fast. That's nice to see. Taking a look at the actual camera app, you can go to that ultra wide angle lens. You can zoom in 2 times, but that is just digital zoom. There's no actual telephoto. Now, video, let's see how high we can get. 4K, 30 frames per second on the Pro. Wait a minute, that's not right. Let's turn HDR off and then you can go up to 60. Okay, I was gonna say, it's got it, and it can go up to 8K as well. So you can get 8K recording on the Pro model. And now, if we go to our regular F6, you can do 4K 60, but that's it. You can't go up to 8K recording, but you can do 4K 60. So there's just a limitation, I believe, in the processor difference. So there's one with the 8 Gen 2 versus the 8S Gen 3. Continuing through with the app, you do have a portrait mode, night mode, and here is all of the other options: long exposure, panorama, 50 megapixel mode, and slow motion. Let's see if there's a difference in that. So you can do 720p at, whoa, 1920 frames per second, but let's go up to 1080 and see what we can get up to. So 960. And then on the F6, we can get up to 240. So slow motion, higher frame rate on the F6 Pro. Now the base model of the Pro gets more RAM, and let's talk about that processor difference. So you do have an 8S Gen 3, which is their flagship is Gen 3, the 8 Gen 3. The 8S is just more of like a slimmed down version, and honestly they're very similar. The 8 Gen 2 and the 8S Gen 3 are very similar chips. To be completely honest, the biggest difference you'll notice, other than the ones I mentioned earlier, is the GPU performance on the 8 Gen 2 is a little bit better than the 8S Gen 3, but you get a newer chip with the 8S Gen 3, so pretty similar overall, to be completely honest. Both do have 5,000 milliamp hour batteries. Like I said, the Pro feels a little bit heavier, but that's just because of the build materials that were used. In case you needed it, a quick look at the phones with the included case on them. Honestly, nothing too special about the cases, but like I said, nice to have extras in a phone that's priced as low as it is. So anyways, that is it from me on the POCO F6 and the F6 Pro. Drop a comment, let me know which one you're gonna go with. Again, there are differences, obviously including the price. Is that over $100 difference between the two actually worth it, or are you just gonna go with the F6 model? A lot more to come though, so be sure to click that subscribe button. Be sure to follow on various social media. I'll link to it in the description of the video below, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up. As always, thanks for watching.